podcast is a production of Widener Law Commonwealth in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For more information, visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu/podcast. Now here's your host, Julie Sheldon.
Welcome to Widener Law Commonwealth's podcast. Today we are talking about the bar exam and bar prep, and we are here with Associate Professor of Legal Methods, David Raker-Jordan. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, good to see you.
So we can kind of jump right into it. Tell me about the elusive bar exam. You know, once a law student graduates, they have to pass a bar exam. Tell me what it is.
Well, the bar exam is one of the final hurdles to becoming an attorney. Generally, you could think of like a 4-step process to become an attorney. First, you have to graduate from an ABA-approved law school. Mm-hmm. You then have to pass the Multi-State Professional Responsibility Exam, which we call the MPRE. Most people take that in their second year of law school. Then you have to pass the bar exam. That's what we're going to focus on today. And then finally, you have to pass the character and fitness examination or process that your state sets up. So of those four, probably the most difficult is going to law school. But after that, it would be passing the bar exam.
Okay.
So the bar exam for most states entails 3 parts. There are essay questions, multiple choice questions, and what's called a performance test. In most states, this bar exam is going to take you 2 days. There's a few states that have 2.5 days. I don't think anybody has a 3-day bar exam anymore. But it's a long process. So people are going to spend 8 to 10 weeks studying for this 2-day exam. And although the bar examiners don't say this, I think that it's all part of this grand scheme that they have to make sure that before they let you handle people's money and futures and lives, that you can handle a great degree of stress over a long period of time.
Okay. Now, you mentioned both multiple choice and essay questions. Can you give us an example of what some of those might be?
Well, so on the multiple choice questions, they come to students in what's called the multi-state bar exam. It's 200 multiple choice questions. You do half in the morning, half in the afternoon. They cover 7 different legal topics that corresponds fairly closely to topics that you would take in the first year and in the second year of law school. They're traditionally thought of as very foundational courses, so contracts, torts, civil procedure, property, criminal law, evidence, the kind of things that if you're going to be a lawyer, you need to know some basic information about those areas.
Okay. And then as far as the open-ended questions, the essay questions, are those done on a separate day than the multiple choice or no? Yes,
they are. So the multi-state bar exam, the 200 multiple choice questions, those questions are made available through the National Conference of Bar Examiners. Those questions are always given on a particular day. So across the country, I think this is generally right, just about everybody's going to take those questions on the same day. So the other day is it's thought of as like the local. There's like a local day and there's a national day. The National Bar Exam is the national day, and then there's a local day. So in Pennsylvania, the first day of the bar exam is the local day, where you'll be tested on Pennsylvania law, but you're also tested on a lot of general legal principles as well. So you'll have those essay questions and that performance test on the first day.
So I know that it's the bar exam is typically given in Pennsylvania in July and in February. Is that true across the United States? It's always given on the same days or in all states?
Generally, I would say yes. So increasingly, more and more states are going to the uniform bar exam. And the uniform bar exam always occurs on particular days. It's the end of February, the end of July. It's very close to the days that the Pennsylvania bar exam is given. Pennsylvania bar exam is usually, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday. The uniform bar exam, I believe, is Wednesday and Thursday. So it's in that same week. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, to my knowledge, it's always that end of February and end of July. I don't think anybody else has bars on other dates.
Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about prep. So if I'm a recent alum, I've just graduated, my next step is to take the bar. How do I begin to study? Or I would assume that I've already probably begun to study from the first day of law school as I begin to prep myself. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so certainly everything that you learn in law school, it may not be directly applicable to the bar exam, but the skills and a lot of the law that you're going to learn in law school is going to be directly applicable on the bar exam. Regardless of where you go to law school, regardless of what grades you get in law school, the advice is always the same. You need to sign up for a commercial bar exam prep course. There's a number of companies that provide those. The big three would be Barbary, Kaplan, and I would say Themis. Themis is kind of a newer entry into the market, but the people who started Themis came from Barbary and Kaplan. Those three companies have a lot of experience in teaching applicants how to study for the bar exam. And for the vast majority of people, you sign up for that course, you do what they tell you to do, and you pass the bar exam.
Okay. What are some of the things that they teach in the commercial courses? And what are some of the tips they give? What are some of the preparatory skills that they present?
So they're going to cover all of the topics that you're going to have on a bar exam. So they tweak it for different states. So if you take it for Pennsylvania, then they're going to make sure they're going to cover Pennsylvania-specific items in contract law or in tort law, things that they anticipate you're going to see on a bar exam. They generally start off with, for a given day of study, the beginning of the day, there's a video that you would watch or there'd be a lecture that you would attend. Most of them have created kind of interactive forms or interactive worksheets that you use during the lecture where you don't have to take your own notes from scratch. They give you some of the notes, but then you have the ability to write in certain parts into the notes just to make it a little bit more interactive. It's kind of boring to sit there for 2 or 3 hours, listen to somebody talk. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't want to take their own notes, so they give you kind of half and half. They give you some notes, and you have to take some notes. Then in the afternoon, you have time schedule where you're actually working through problems. So you're either doing multiple choice questions, you're answering essay questions, you might be working on a practice performance test, or they might have you go back and review your notes or review a lecture from earlier. So there's they introduce you to a subject, you do some questions in the subject, you come back around and take a look at the subject again. So by being exposed to it a few times, the thought is, and actually in practice it works, you're going to remember enough of the law to be able to pass that bar exam. Because that bar exam, it's a pass-fail endeavor. You're not trying to get an A. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to pass. Okay. So in some ways it's similar to law school, but in some ways it's very different. And that difference, I think, causes students a lot of stress. Okay.
And how long are the courses typically, and what is the cost? Is there a ballpark figure for cost on them?
Costs vary. You can often negotiate a pretty low price in your first year in law school. The prices tend to go up as you get closer to graduation, but even then, you're often able to get a good price. For the online only courses, I've heard of students getting those for less than $1,000. For Barbary and Kaplan, Barbary's probably the more expensive one. It can range anywhere between like $2,000 to $3,000. So this is like an 8 to 12 week course. Okay. Where you're going to be working every day. You're going to be putting in probably between 40, 50, maybe even 60 hours a week studying for the bar exam. In Pennsylvania, to study for the bar exam, you've got the 7 MBE subjects, and then there's an additional about 12 subjects.
What are the MBE subjects?
The MBE, that's the contracts, the property, civil procedure, criminal law, criminal procedure, evidence, constitutional law. So that's where they take the 200 multiple choice questions. But then you'll also find that same law being tested oftentimes in the essay questions.
Okay. So do they come on, would they come on campus to do this, or is it more of a self-guided, they can do this at home, they can do this in the library, or is it something where they go and they sit in a classroom and they actually, watch it with a group of their peers?
So all those options are available.
Okay.
So this summer in Philadelphia, there's a live lecture every day at University of Penn Law School. They then live broadcast that out to different locations. So here at Widener Commonwealth, we get the live broadcast every day for Barbary. Mm-hmm. So students who are using Barbary, who want to watch the broadcast live, can come in and sit in one of the classrooms and watch that. Kaplan also has some of those live broadcasts. We don't have a live one on this campus. So students who are using Kaplan oftentimes will get together and watch it online on a computer. But even with the Barbary course, you could watch it online from home. You can come in and watch it on a video link at a school, or you could go to a location where it's being presented live. There's a lot of different options nowadays, which is good, but it's also kind of dangerous. For a lot of students, their thought is, well, I'll just sleep late this morning, and I'll get up, and I'll watch the video when I want to. And before you know it, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you haven't finished watching the video yet, and you still have a lot of work to do.
My next question was going to be, do you find that there is one method that seems to garner more success for students studying or for alumni studying than another? Is it better to have that pressure to get up early in the morning, go and do your work, sit with your classroom of peers, or is it just more of a personal choice for somebody how they learn better?
I wouldn't say it's a personal choice. I would say it depends on the student. Okay. So students who are disciplined and who can manage their own learning without a lot of external stimulus or people pushing on them or yelling at them, they can do a completely online course. They can watch all the videos at home. They can study by themselves, and they can pass the bar. But for a lot of students, that doesn't work. They know that they need to have a schedule. And so I've talked with a number of students who, even though they could watch the video at home, they make themselves get up. They come in, they treat it like they're coming to the office. They go into the classroom with a bunch of their peers, and they watch the video. So then they know that by noon, they're finished watching the video for the day, and they've got the rest of the day to work on whatever problems they need to work on. So it really depends on how disciplined folks are. The problem is that the online-only versions of the bar exam prep are sometimes a lot cheaper. Mm-hmm. And so the temptation is I'm going to go for the cheap option, even though there's some people who don't really have the constitution to get themselves up every day and get that done without somebody putting some pressure on them.
Okay. And what if a student wants to practice law in more than one state? We talked a little bit about other bar exams in different states. Say they want to practice in Pennsylvania and New York. Are they going to have to take both the PA and the New York bar? Or does it depend on if it's reciprocal or not?
So it kind of depends if you're talking if they want to practice in two states in the short run or in the long run.
Okay.
In the short run, to practice in Pennsylvania and New York, you'd have to take both bars. For states that use the uniform bar exam, you can take that bar once, and then as long as your score is high enough, you could then basically waive into another state. So New York has now joined the uniform bar exam. Pennsylvania has not. But New Jersey is now a uniform bar exam state. So if you want to practice in both New York and New Jersey, you could take the UBE exam once, and assuming that your test score was high enough, you would then be able to be admitted into both states. But for Pennsylvania, you'd have to either take both exams, or if a state does have reciprocity, and I'd have to check the rule book on which states have reciprocity, generally after 3 to 5 years of practice, you'd be able to waive in and get reciprocity with another state.
Okay. So what would you say is one of your best tips for success for students that are in the midst of studying right now? They're going to take the July bar. What is your number one tip for them?
I think one of the biggest problems students have is anxiety and nerves when it comes to the bar exam. And so what I try to get students to understand is that the bar exam is a test of mental toughness. They have deliberately set this system up to put you through 8 to 10 weeks of hell and then sit for this 2-day exam so that they can determine whether they're going to trust you to work with other people's money and lives and fortunes. So that would be the first thing, is that you need to survive this. It's a marathon. You need to pace yourself. The second is there's more law they're going to test you on than you can learn. You should expect that you're going to run into several questions, maybe some essay questions, but probably certainly some multiple choice questions that you don't know what the answer is. And that you should make your best guess as to what you think the answer would be, and you should move on. This sometimes causes real problems for students who do well in law school, because students who do well in law school know the answers. They know all the material. They've learned everything there is to learn. There's nothing you can throw at them that they don't know. And so for them, it's sometimes really stressful to have that happen on the bar exam where all of a sudden there's a question they don't know what to do. So just adjusting your expectations in terms of how much expertise you're going to have, but realizing that when you take the bar exam, you will know more law than you ever will know in your life. It may not be useful law. It may not be applicable in your jurisdiction, but you'll know more law than you've ever known before. It just may not be all the law that you wish you knew that day. So I think part of it is adjusting applicants' expectations so that they realize why they're doing this and what's expected of them. And then after that, you just have to buckle down and do the work. There's no other way to do it. You've got to work this basically every single day from the day you graduate law. If you take the summer bar, from the day you graduate up until the end of July when you sit for the bar, almost every day you're going to be working. Now, there's will be a few days you take off, but the vast majority of the time, it's like a full-time job, 40 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah, well, I was talking to somebody one time, and they said, that is your job after you graduate law school, is to study for the bar. That's it. That's all you do. Yeah. So I kind of took that to heart, right after graduation, as I watched, new alumni kind of start to study for that. And so how is the bar exam scored? How do they determine pass-fail?
So in Pennsylvania, it's fairly equally divided between the performance test and the essay questions, which are the kind of the local test, and the national test or the multi-state bar exam. So it's not quite 50-50. I don't remember which way it cuts, whether they put a little bit more weight on the essay questions, I think they do, or they put a little bit more weight on the multi-state questions. They score both of those. In Pennsylvania, the pass score is 272. So if you're that or above, you pass. If you're below that, you fail.
Okay.
My understanding is that if you come within, I think it's either 5 or 10 points of what we call the cut score, the pass score, that they go back and they regrade your essays and your performance test, and you get the higher score. But that's the only appeal you get. We have students who sometimes fail by 2 or 3 points, and they're going to have to retake the whole exam. It's not like some professional licensing exams where there's a whole bunch of different parts and you only retake the parts you fail. For the bar exam, you retake the whole thing. You might have done great on the multiple choice questions, but you're going to retake those along with everything else if you have to retake the bar.
And you touched on an important subject of what happens if you don't pass. And we had kind of a side conversation earlier about, is there a limit to how many times you can take it, and how do you start to prep for if you have to take this test again? Because we talked a little bit about the mental game that it is largely as well. So, what happens in that case?
So in Pennsylvania, there's no maximum number of times you can take the bar exam. You can take it as many times as you need to. There are a number of jurisdictions that set limits. I think Virginia, I looked the other day, I think it was either 4 or 5. The states that have limits, usually you can take it 4 or 5 times. I think the National Bar Examiners, their recommendation is that after 3 times, before you can take it again, you should have to do certain things. And mostly that seemed to have to do with figuring out why you're not passing the bar and coming up with a specific plan. What we do with alums who failed the bar is we encourage them first to get their hands on their own questions, their answers to the questions from the bar examiners, which then allows us to sit down with them and figure out where are they weak. So of the 18-odd topics that they're tested on in Pennsylvania, which were the areas where they were having the most problem, and then get them to focus more attention in those areas even while they continue to review the areas where they did well. So for folks who take it a second time, on the one hand, it can be devastating because you know how much work this is, and now you got to go through it all again. On the other hand, if they know they had a solid understanding of contracts and torts and property, but one of the problems they had, maybe they had problems in evidence and criminal procedure, knowing that they've got problems there and putting more focus on that, I think makes the job seem a little bit more doable. So yeah, it's getting back on the horse after you've fallen off, and it's not easy to do, and it can be very discouraging. But there's a lot of folks who are able to come back and pass that second time.
Now, I would assume that each year the bar has different questions on it. It would have to. So each year the ABA goes back and changes all of those questions. Am I?
Yeah, so the National Conference of Bar Examiners, they control the multiple choice questions, and they change those questions virtually every year. There are some questions that they bring back from previous years, and they use those to help scale the score to make sure that the exam isn't any harder or easier than in previous years.
Okay.
The local produced questions, Pennsylvania bar examiners write the essay questions, and they write the performance test. And yes, they write new questions for every iteration of the bar exam.
Okay. Now, you brought along a little supplemental information. You had a book. If somebody has questions about other bar exams in different states, what is that you have? And we can put a link to this in our podcast as well.
Yeah. So the National Conference of Bar Examiners puts out a book called The Comprehensive Guide to Bar Admission Requirements. They put it out every year. And if you went to their website, ncbe.org, I believe, under publications, you can find a link to an online PDF version of this comprehensive guide to bar admission requirements, and it covers all the bar examinations in all 50 states plus the District of Columbia. It gives you all the information you need, dates as to when applications are due, the amount of money it's going to cost you, whether they use the uniform bar exam or they have a homegrown bar exam. It's the go-to book if you're trying to figure out what you need to do to become a licensed attorney in a particular jurisdiction.
One last question I think I forgot to ask you was how much, we talked earlier about how much these bar exams cost to do. Pennsylvania is around $600, I think, right, this year?
Pennsylvania has kind of a sliding scale. They start, I think, around $600 or $650, and the later you wait in the process, the more the price goes up. I've seen bar exams as low as about $400 out in the Midwest, and then in other parts of the country, it can cost you as much as $1,200 or a few $100s more than that to take a bar exam.
Okay.
So it's not a cheap investment.
No, and in addition to all of the prep courses that you would then
and then the prep course could cost you $1,000 to $2,000 to maybe even $3,000.
Okay.
Yes.
So everybody knows that I like to have a fun question at the end of these interviews to liven things up a little bit. So my question for you is, what is your favorite 80s jam?
My favorite.
Your cruising music.
Jam.
What it's summer. What's your favorite 80s jam? Or 90s? We can do 90s too, but.
I'll go with the Greg Kihn Band.
Okay.
They had a song called Jeopardy.
Okay.
Weird Al did a remake of it years later, which was hilarious. But the original was such a catchy tune. I remember at the time it came out, people were playing it all the time. It was one of those songs that it was in heavy rotation.
Takes you back every time you hear it.
On the radio, for those of you who remember what radio was.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to remind our audience that we'll have additional episodes coming up soon, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Widener University Commonwealth Law School is the Pennsylvania capital's only law school, with 3 specialized centers of legal scholarship through its Law and Government Institute, Environmental Law and Sustainability Center, and Business Advising Program. Widener Law Commonwealth offers an exceptional learning experience that is personal, practical, and professional. Visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu for more information.